Tonight, well, we're on the edge. Time is running out. Congress has only 4 days to keep the government from shutting down. And in just hours, the Senate makes its next move.
Well, this law is a mess. It needs to go.
The Affordable Care Act is here to stay.
There's going to be real pain inflicted upon the American dream by Obamacare and by its different provisions.
We're seeing a crusade this week from the far right of the Republican Party.
The only thing I didn't see mentioned was a birther bill to attach to it.
Obamacare is a huge disaster.
If anyone here thinks Republicans in the House have a workable plan for a shutdown on Monday, tell me about it.
The strategy is to use every opportunity at our disposal to try to get rid of this law and of the horrible impact it's going to have on the American dream.
95% of uninsured Americans will see their premiums cost less than was expected.
The report was a complete fraud. It's a hypothetical. It's a mythical comparison. There's nothing to it. It's fiction, if you will.
You can huff, you can puff for 21 hours, but you cannot blow the Affordable Care Act away.
We sent the Senate a continuing resolution that funds the government and stops Obamacare before it costs one more job.
Every hour that ticks by puts our country closer to a shutdown.
Well, I hope some of our Democratic friends who voted for this law will look themselves in the mirror and think, truly think, about whether protecting the president's pride is really more important than helping the American people.
Earlier, Senator Marco Rubio went on the record from Capitol Hill. So predict, are we going to have a government shutdown or not? How do you see this playing out?
Well, I hope not. I don't know anybody, certainly I don't know of any Republican who's in favor of a government shutdown. The only one who's obsessed with the government shutdown and keeps talking about it is the president and Senator Reid. I mean, they seem obsessed with this because they keep warning that they're going to shut down the government if Obamacare is touched. So the truth is, this isn't about shutting down the government. This is about shutting down Obamacare. This is because it's hurting people and it's hurting the American dream. And, you know, the argument we've made this week is that this law is so bad because it's hurting people who are trying to make it. People who have made it, they're going to be able to deal with Obamacare. They don't like it, they shouldn't have to deal with it, but they can afford to deal with it. They can get lawyers to help navigate it and lobbyists to help them get waivers. But the people who are trying to make it, who are trying to start a business, or if you're working full-time and now are being moved to part-time, or if you're working part-time and now you're losing your hours, these are the people that are really going to be hurt by this. And it isn't fair, it's wrong.
Is it realistic that it could get defunded by this continuing resolution in recognition of who has the majority in both houses? Or is it realistic to think that it could be defunded with the debt ceiling debate?
Well, first of all, it is realistic that it can be defunded if 4 Democrats or 5 change their mind. The problem is that they're so locked into it. You have Democrats, by the way, that are from states where Mitt Romney won. So I can tell you Obamacare is not popular in those states. But they're so afraid of the left-wing base of their own party. They're so afraid of being attacked by the liberal wing of the Democratic Party that they can't even express their sentiments about Obamacare. Just today, one of my colleagues here said that he would be open to delaying it for a year. He got attacked by all the left-wing blogs.
Who said that? Who said that?
Well, I believe it was Senator Manchin who said that if it came up for a chance to delay the individual mandate for a year, he'd be in favor of it. It's a very reasonable approach, especially when one thinks about the state he represents and their feelings about Obamacare. And you saw the reaction from the left was almost immediate. So again, there's a lot of pressure on some of these Democrats from the left-wing base of their party, and Obamacare has become almost in their minds like the Holy Grail. You can't touch it, you can't fix it, you can't deal with it, you can't do anything about it. The only one who's allowed to ignore and make changes to Obamacare is Barack Obama in their eyes.
Well, you know, it's sort of a sad commentary. I mean, this is an important issue regardless of which side you're on, but it almost is like a schoolyard. I mean, Senator Harry Reid has said it's a charade. He says it's a subterfuge. He's demonizing the Tea Party. I mean, it really has gotten sort of rugged on the floor.
Well, again, look, I mean, they've been saying those things for years. Just yesterday, a well-known commentator in American politics said that the Tea Party's racist. I mean, these are ridiculous accusations from some people that should know better and are supposedly responsible journalists. But let me just back up and say this. Nothing has happened this week outside the norm. These are the rules of the Senate. It allows the senator to stand up on the floor and to speak until they don't want to give the floor up. The truth is that Senator Cruz stopped speaking yesterday. We haven't had any significant votes since then. So the bottom line is that nothing here has been slowed down by this, but certainly the American people are more aware today than they were 24, 48 hours ago about why Obamacare is so bad and the dangers of it. And now everyone here will have to vote. and they have to explain, if they vote against defunding Obamacare, when this thing goes through and it starts hurting people like it already is, they're going to have to explain to their constituents why they voted for this and why they keep funding it.
Well, it's going to be slowed down a little bit because Senator Reid wanted to fast track it tonight, and Senator Mike Lee said that he would vote against it, so they can't get unanimous consent to move it forward. So it's slowed down a little bit.
Well, the vote will be tomorrow. I think the point that they were trying to make is that they would, if you're going to vote on it at 8 o'clock tonight while everybody's off, paying attention to something else. What they're asking is for the vote to be tomorrow during normal, regular business hours, so the American people can see how their representatives and how their senators voted.
I don't know how the people, across the country, I don't like to speak for them. They can speak for themselves, but it is sort of curious to me. It's sort of this mad rush now, as though this is so important, and it is because the deadline's coming up September 30th. But the fact is that everybody knew September 30th is going to be rolling around.
Right.
We knew it before everyone went on the 5-week vacation in August. And in fact, the continuing resolution is because politicians hadn't done their work on the budget. So the whole idea that there's this mad rush really has been brought upon the House and Senate by themselves.
It's curious. Almost every political process is like that. Even at the state level, they have deadlines for passing their budgets. In many states, you don't see any movement on it till the end. Sometimes it's human nature to just leave it for the last minute. I would prefer.
But that's a bad human nature.
Yeah, well, it's not the best way to run the most important economy on the planet. It's not the best way to run the most important government on the planet in terms of its impact on the most important economy on the planet. It's not the ideal way to do it, and it's not just. But here's one that's even scarier. We know that we have a future debt crisis awaiting us. We know that. We know that if we keep doing what we're doing now, we don't know when it's going to be, but it is going to happen. There will be a debt crisis. There's a lack of urgency about that. They're asking, let's just raise the debt limit again, and let's not make any structural changes to the programs that are causing that debt to grow so fast. There's just no urgency about it. There's this notion that we can just let it keep going. That's ridiculous.
President Obama said he's not going to negotiate on spending cuts with the debt ceiling. Speaker Boehner has said that he wants the structural changes, some changes. So what happens with the debt ceiling come next week, or actually the 17th?
Obviously, it's an unknown. I can't predict. I don't have a crystal ball in that regard. But I think it's ironic that the president basically says he will not discuss anything to do with the debt. And any sort of linking the debt limit to any other conversation. The debt limit is a warning to us. What he's basically saying is that if we don't give him the authority to borrow more money, we can't fund the operation of the government. That's an admission that this government cannot operate without borrowing money. That alone is an indictment of the situation today. And the president is saying, I'm not going to do anything about changing that trajectory. That's a ridiculous position to take.
Why does he take that position? Do you think it's his philosophy and his passion, his ideology, or do you think they're political
I'll tell
issues?
you why. He has a base of his party that does not believe that the debt is a problem. They're more wedded to the idea of government spending than they are worried about a debt crisis. They believe the government and big government solves our problems. They believe economic growth and prosperity is the result of big government. They believe that our economy can't possibly grow anymore, and so the job of government is to divide it up among us by taking from those they think make too much and distributing it among us. That's why, number one. And number two, I think this president has decided that he doesn't want to go down as the guy who made changes to Medicare or Social Security. He knows that has to be done, but he'd prefer for one of his successors to do it. He doesn't want to be the one that does it. He doesn't want that to be part of his legacy because it's too difficult to do, and he doesn't want to go down with a legacy that the left wing of his party doesn't like.
What's the relationship when you pass Senator Harry Reid in the hall? Does he say, hello, Senator? Is it friendly, or does everyone look the other way?
Well, with me it is. I don't know how it is with everybody else, but certainly with me it is. I've known him for very long. We don't work together on many things, but I always show personal respect towards everybody. I respect everybody here. It's not personal for me. I don't come here to fight against anybody. I came here to fight for and on behalf of, especially those people who don't have a voice, who don't have the power or the influence to be able to come up here and get a law passed for them or get a special exemption from Obamacare. And what's ironic is that the people who are being most hurt by Obamacare are the people that the law claimed it would be helping. The working class, the middle class, students that are just graduated from college, they're the ones that are going to be hurt the most by this. The millionaires and billionaires, as the president likes to call them, they may not like Obamacare, but they're going to be able to afford to deal with it. But it's the people who are trying to make it that are going to be hurt the most. I think it's pretty sad.
Senator, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now to Republican Senator Tim Scott. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
How do you intend to vote on the culture?
No, I'll definitely be voting no.
And why is that?
I think if you look at the continuing resolution process in and of itself, if you take defunding Obamacare, which I'm happy to defund Obamacare, the fact of the matter is that there's a deeper problem in this federal government. It's the way we spend money. We spend too much without any question. The way we plan to spend money is on short-term fixes. I ran a business for the last 15 years. I cannot imagine showing up excited that I beat the deadline by a day. All of my business planning suggests that we need a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year look into the future. When you do these short-term continuing resolutions, you're not doing good planning for the country. And with a $4 trillion company called the federal government, we got to treat it like a business. We got to have a long-term plan. We got to reconcile the budgets. And we spent very little time having a conversation about reconciling the budget between the House and the Senate because they're so far apart. But it doesn't make continuing resolutions good for the country. It's bad for business. It's bad for families. Families have to balance their budget across the kitchen table. I had, as a small business owner, had to balance my budget on an annual basis. I had to have a plan for the next 3 years. The federal government, $4 trillion nearly in spending, and we have no clue what our priorities are because we spend no time figuring that out.
What's so interesting, your vote is a little bit different than, for instance, Senator Cruz and Senator Lee. They are focusing on defunding Obamacare, and as sort of a bizarre way the rules are done is that they would actually be voting against the House bill, but that's because they're trying to prevent Senator Harry Reid from stripping defunding out of it. Your objection to the continuing resolutions, I understand, is that you just think it's a lousy way to run a business or to run a nation, sort of limping along, doing these 60 days or 90 days. So yours is a little bit different, your objection.
It really is. I mean, I think I agree with Mike Lee and Ted Cruz on defunding Obamacare. It's an absolute necessity, but that's only one part of the problem. The core of the problem that is bigger than simply defunding Obamacare is how we manage taxpayers' dollars. It costs more to do annual and then shorter term appropriations. It increases the cost of our responsibility to run a very effective and limited government. Every time we do an annual appropriation, every time we do a 6-month, or as we're looking at now, a 6-week continuing resolution.
I'm with you. I mean, I think it's appalling that now you've even got like Senator Reid complaining about Senator Lee and Senator Cruz delaying things and trying to push into a government shutdown. When who didn't know September 30th was going to roll around, and who had the responsibility to see that we had some sort of deal in this country to manage our resources or our money? And now you've got Senator Harry Reid. Suddenly he's the guy for fast action. Where was he last August 1 when they took a 5-week vacation?
We should have been here, number one. Number two, the fact of the matter is, what I've learned is that September 30th seems to happen every calendar year right
I've noticed
before
that
October
as well.
1st.
I've noticed that.
I'm not quite sure why this is such a startling fact. It's as if we've saved the day by beating the deadline of October 1st. Can you imagine any business, Fox News, my small little business, running my books based on the day before all the bills start getting due for the next cycle? It doesn't work that way.
Why don't you think others see it that way? I mean, everyone is so busy talking about the continuing resolution, but no one understands the reason there's a continuing resolution is because the job of creating a budget and agreeing on a budget was never met. So it's like, this is really sort of, they had, one job wasn't done, and now a second job to cover up for the first job not done can't be done.
It's like hiring a secretary for your secretary who's not doing the job. He's not doing his job, so we hire a secretary for him. It doesn't work, number one. Number two, if you look at the last 4 years where the Senate had no budget whatsoever, I mean, the fact that we have a budget now is a laughable document simply because it needs another $1 trillion to keep it moving.
At least it's a start. At least it's. I mean, can I tell you?
It's a bad start, but it's a start.
Well, no, but at least you get both sides sitting down at a table and talking, because unless the Senate had a budget, even if you don't like the budget,
yes,
at least that was sort of a pocket veto. Incidentally, it was a pocket veto of Senator Harry Reid, so that there can be no discussion, no debate. You need to. The Senate need to put one on the table, and finally they did, even if you don't like it.
1,200 days without a budget. It's better to have one than not have one. It'd be nice for these folks to sit down and see if there's any way to reconcile it. It's important to the American people that we breathe new confidence back into this system.
Why doesn't anyone get that, though? I mean, to me, it's stunning. I mean, I would be horrified. I would be ashamed if that's the way I did my job. If I just kept covering up for not doing it. I mean, at some point,
I agree.
I'd be worried about losing my job.
We all should be. At the end of the day, every day should be a job application. And we should be applying for the job back at home. When I spoke earlier in August to a group, I said very clearly, I don't support funding Obamacare. I voted against it 40 times. I'm going to vote against it tomorrow. But the fact of the matter, a greater travesty, perhaps, is the way that we have these continuing resolutions. We had 4 consecutive years of a $1 trillion deficit. This year, we're over $600 billion or so. We've got one of the better years of money coming in because people saw and realized their income last year because of the higher taxes January 2nd. So what we're really looking at is a quagmire pit that only gets worse. Think about this, a $17 trillion debt. Our interest-only payments exceed $300 billion. And we're not paying down the debt. And so we're going to have a conversation about spending more money this year, and then in a couple of weeks we're going to have another conversation about the debt ceiling. And the American people are like, really? This is the best you guys can do?
It's appalling.
We should be ashamed of this process.
Senator, always nice to see you, sir.
Thank you very much, Greta.
Now to tonight's hot button issue on GretaWire.com. Who is winning the battle in the Senate, Senator Harry Reid or Senator Ted Cruz? Go to GretaWire.com and vote.